Felt like I was just being like knocked down trial after trial, like time after time, and I was just like, I can't anymore. Oh, that's a really good question. Oh, I felt like a legend when I rang the bell at my last chemotherapy. That was the best feeling ever. And like all the nurses came over and they like hugged me, and then everyone else who was in the room as well was like clapping and celebrating, because I feel like collectively, even if it's not your time to ring, you just know how important that moment is. And I was just that one step closer to being like, yeah, I beat cancer actually. So yeah, that's when I felt like a legend.
Can you tell us a story about how you found out that you had cancer? Like, just take us back with you.
So I noticed a lump on the left side of my neck, and it was quite firm and it was really large. And then I noticed several other lumps appearing, which was like super alarming. And at first I did ignore it because I thought, oh, I've maybe just like hit myself and bumped myself, whatever. And then when I went to the GP, they told me it was just an infection. Don't worry, it's fine. So I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then it was growing and I realised that's a problem. Went back, was told the same thing, multiple visits, and they referred me to an ear, neck and throat specialist, just precaution. And that's when they told me that's not cancerous, don't worry, it's fine, it's just an infection. And then they were like, we're gonna do a biopsy just to be sure. So I was like, okay, great. And then I actually went on holiday and they called me while I was abroad, and that's when alarm bells started to ring, and I thought, okay, they wouldn't contact me if it wasn't urgent. And I came back from holiday to a flood of letters, and I opened one and it said hematology and oncology, and that's when I was like, oh my gosh, like it's happening. Went to the doctors and they were like, yep, you've got Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's obviously a form of cancer, and it just blew me away because I was misdiagnosed for months, and it was a case of I actually was going to the GP. I went to the hospital. You all told me it was just an infection. I was told it's not cancerous. So to hear those words, I remember I laughed at first, but it wasn't a case I did not think cancer was funny. It was just I was in such disbelief. I couldn't believe I actually had cancer this entire time, and everyone told me it was an infection. So, yeah.
Why is it to people who are in that kind of situation and they're not being taken seriously by GPs?
Be persistent, keep going. It doesn't matter if they tell you, no, it's nothing. You know your body at the end of the day, and until you have the answers that you are completely happy with, don't stop. It's your life and you get one shot at this. Why would you just take someone's word for gospel when you can feel within yourself something isn't right? And that's how I felt. I felt like this wasn't right and the lump was growing. There were other symptoms which I didn't realise were cancerous at the time. So just you know yourself, just keep going. So I had shortness of breath, it was summer, so I just assumed the heat. I was like, it's hot. I had itchiness, didn't think itchiness was related to cancer. I had fatigue again, just assuming, because I was on holiday as well, everything was justifiable. And I had night sweats, which it was coming up to my brother's anniversary, so I assumed it was just grief because that happened to me before. So I was like, oh, every single thing that was happening to me, I had an answer for, and I didn't realise they were all symptoms of lymphoma. So it definitely helps to be like educated and aware of what the signs and symptoms are.
What was it like to be diagnosed with cancer at such a young age?
So I was 22 when I was diagnosed, and it was just after graduation. So I graduated a year prior. And for me, you're still sort of figuring out and finding what you want to do in life. Because you're so young, you're like, I'm just going to enjoy myself. And you really want to go for things. And then cancer comes, and it's like the biggest speed bump you could have imagined in your journey of life. But what I would say is, if you are a young person who has a diagnosis, yes, it is hard and it is difficult because you sort of think, oh my gosh, I'm just figuring out life. But what I did and what I would advise someone is take this as your 2.0. Like, you get to go again. Once you get through it all, and we're going to be positive and manifest, you will get through and you'll be in remission. Do what you want in this life. Like, remind yourself of all the things that you were like, oh, I was too shy to do that. No, be prepared to be like, right, I'm going for it, because you've got your whole life ahead of you, especially if you are diagnosed quite young. It's like, oh my gosh, I can just do whatever I want and just go for it. So yes, it's difficult, but try to look for the blessing in the midst of all the madness.
How did your life change after the diagnosis?
Oh my gosh. It's so crazy because I literally don't even recognise like pre-cancer self. It's weird because I find cancer was like a beautiful tragedy, and I know it sounds really weird to describe it like that, but it's a case of I really found myself, and for me I had a lot of, it sounds so bad, but I had a lot of bad things happen in such a short amount of time. The year prior I lost my brother, and then 10 days after I lost my auntie, and literally almost exactly a year after I was diagnosed with cancer. So for me, the reason why my diagnosis was just madness was because I was already going through so much, and it was literally like, oh my gosh, I felt like I was just being like knocked down trial after trial, like time after time, and I was just like, I can't anymore. So I remember when I got the diagnosis, I just cried. I cried hard. Like I think I cried for like a day straight because I just couldn't get my head around everything. Obviously losing my brother, it was like, how have my parents gotten a child that's sick with cancer? I kind of felt like bad almost, even though it wasn't my fault. So I was like, right, I'm gonna fight. I'm literally gonna fight, and I'm going to beat it, and I'm gonna just go for it. And it wasn't easy, but I literally remember thinking, we have gone through hell. I'm not gonna let this be the thing that just like demolishes us. Like I was like, there's no way. So yeah, that was it.
Do you think your diagnosis had any long-term effects?
So for me, I think a physical side effect that's been long term is hyperpigmentation, which isn't always discussed, and that was really hard for me because like any scratches, bumps or anything would just really flare up on my skin. And I still have quite a lot of marks from when I was on active treatment as well, and they're still here to this day, like nearly 3 years out. So for me, that was a really big side effect. And I think mentally, I don't know if it's like an actual term, but like survivor's guilt, especially because I've made friends with a lot of people within the cancer community who are still actively on treatment. And I have friends who have stage 4 or incurable, and to me they aren't someone who has cancer, they're my friend. So not that I forget their diagnosis, but it's sort of like that's not even a thing to me, like you're my friend. But then when I remember and I'm just like, oh, I'm on the other end and you're still going through it, that is really hard to deal with because I know what it's like to go on chemotherapy, I know what radiotherapy is like, I know what all those surgeries are like, and the fact that you still have to go through that, like I feel so awful. So I think it is really hard finding that balance. Oh, that's such a hard question. I would want my legacy to be that everyone remembers how strong they are and don't underestimate your power. I know that a lot of things are going to come at you in this life. No one said it's going to be easy. A lot of things are going to happen, but if you can keep going, and if I can leave that legacy behind of bad things happen, yes, sort of get over it the best way you know how. And I know it sounds really harsh, but I'd want everyone to know that you are so much more stronger than what's in front of you. So believe in yourself.